Today I've installed two mobile Motorola radios into a Ford F450 Super Duty. It doesn't really matter what type of truck it is. Um, it's very similar to Dodge and other trucks. And I've installed two antennas, two radios, and I'm going to show you how I've done the antennas. This is the UHF antenna. I've used a custom bracket. I've used the fender bolt, and also I use two screws, one to hold that antenna cable in place, and also prevent the antenna to vibrate and move around. Usually one screw is enough, but these guys go on a mining site, they go off-road a lot, and I don't want to see them back in a year or two with moving antennas and stuff. So that's the UHF antenna. It goes down into the firewall. I use an existing hole down there, the firewall, and I installed a little rubber grommet to protect this cable and the harness. And this is the VHF antenna, and I installed it in a similar way. And I ran the antenna coaxial cable underneath. I found the hole into the firewall, and I used that hole. And both antennas are nicely aligned, and not far is the FM antenna, but I kept some distance between the FM antenna and the VHF antenna, so they look alright. Then I used the grommet, the rubber grommet on the right hand side, to run the antenna cable, and I tied the antenna cable to existing harness. I went behind the glove compartment and behind these systems here, and I got it. I met the radio harness, the power cable, and the other antenna from the other radio all the way to the back of this radio. So I've used a we call this ones clamshells. It's kind of a foldable bracket that I can adjust the height or the angle of the radios. So in this case I had to use the same bracket for both radios, so they are very solid. So one is a digital Motorola radio, the other one is just a PM400, that's an older analog radio. And of course I've used two microphones, one next to each other. So one is used, one is new. This was a new radio. And VHF antenna, I showed you the grommet into the firewall. Usually I go into this big grommet, the harness that goes from the engine compartment back to the cabin, to the driver environment, and I poke a hole underneath on the side away from the cables, and I'm running my cables, or just one cable, maybe only at the antenna, depends where I'm getting the power. But in this case I thought, since there was a hole, I've used that hole. Then I run this antenna all the way to the radios. So I have one antenna from that side, one antenna from the driver's side, and of course power. So I installed the harness. I made a harness out of split loom and the power cables, and I run it under this mat, the plastic that covers this part of the truck, and I ran that harness up here underneath. Then I got to the fuse panel, and I've installed one fuse for both radios, because nobody is going to key up the two radios at the same time, so I use 20 amps fuse. And of course I always label the fuses, and of course I'm going to put the lead back on the fuse box. And I installed a strobe, which is was a separate task. And for the strobe I installed a sort of a switch here. Yes, and also they have some sort of a special light when they go into the mining site.